Hello and good morning. Nice to have you all with us, and welcome to some very familiar faces. Lovely to have some of our members and guests here as well today. Very important Q&A, absolutely, and the JobKeeper realities. Welcome, Troy, and I'll just make a special mention to some very famous best practice people around Australia as well. Welcome to Ravi, Peter Gestos, Brendan Smith, Ian Crilly. Who else have we got with us this morning? Simon Manning, Dilruk as well. Fantastic to have you all with us. And the hard questions, what's really fascinating, we saw a publication yesterday. The Australian Bureau of Statistics is suggesting that only 4 out of every 5 SMEs is even contemplating the application for JobKeeper or stimulus funding, which is fascinating. So we're going to talk about that in a moment, in the small business mindset in this country, and dare I say, a lack of appreciation for the economic realities that the stimulus funding is actually set up and intended to achieve what the objectives are. And I guess some of that is being missed by the small business economy of Australia, which is a concern for us in restarting this economy at the back end of this. So not sure yet if Justin Smith has joined us, but we do have some other potential commentary contributors, I'm sure, from other best practice leading accountants, Ravi Nand, Simon Manning as well. Can probably jump on. Peter Gestos as well can possibly jump on as well. Just for all of our small business owners attending today, or small business owners that arrive late today, we will record this session, and upon request via email, you'll get a copy of that. Joe Scuderi, nice to have you with us. Mark Wright, Bernice McLaren as well. So a recording of this will be available, and we really want to get this message out into the small business community. We're quite concerned about the misunderstandings around what's intended for JobKeeper. And so we might kick off. Lots of people still joining, which is wonderful. So Troy, and I'll just encourage Simon, Ravi, just to drop a message in into the chat box there if you're ready to contribute on a particular question I'm going to throw out in that regard for our small business owners' benefit. So just kicking off, Troy, we need to really explain the implications of the May 10 deadline, don't we? And what that actually means, because May 10 and May 24th are not quite understood, I think, in small business land. It might be one thing for the accounting industry, but what's important about May 10 and May 24 for business owners that do have employees that may not be completely organised for JobKeeper?
Well, I think probably the main focus for most.
Checking audio, mate. Give me a second, Troy. Haven't got you for some reason there. Try again. Let me try it from this end. Try now.
Yeah, that should be right now.
No, that's very odd. What's happened to that audio there? Excuse me, we'll just check that technical issue there, ladies and gents, and try and work out what's happening with the audio for Troy. Troy, I'll try and drive it from this end. It suggests that that should be working now. I don't understand why that isn't. Simon, have you got your speakers set up there at the moment, or Ravi, that you might be able to jump in the event while I try and recalibrate Troy's audio? Give us a second there, Ravi, and let's see if that's possible. Can you just check your audio, Ravi?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
No, we've got a glitch with the system here, people. That's for sure. So we'll just try and open that up. Troy, I wonder if we should just get you straight on the phone, mate, and see if we can get that working. Is that okay?
Yep.
And the chat box is alight here. You can hear us, Simon and Brendan. You can hear Troy as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. So it's just me. That is great news. So Troy, I'll get you to kick off, mate, and I will just simply change it from it. Carla, thanks for the feedback, Carla. Appreciate it. Ian as well. Terrific. Troy, over to you, mate.
Okay, so I think everybody else can hear me, but I think one of the impending problems we're going to have with the 10th of May is that a lot of us are focusing on getting the enrolments through by the 31st of May, purely focusing on business with employees, and getting those top-up payments if required to make sure they're done by this Friday the 8th. The secondary problem is, and us as a firm, we're referring to the payments as fortnight payments, fortnight 1, 2, 3, and so on. So 1 and 2 are now done and dusted. So we're going to make sure to get those payments through the 8th. But we're also going to bear in mind that this Sunday is the last day for fortnight 3. So if there's a number of employers that are either weekly, fortnight, or even some are monthly. So I think we've taken our eye off the ball a little bit, because come Monday morning, when we're looking to see who's paid fortnight 3 and who hasn't, we're just going to be careful that we're not just focused on topping up fortnight 1 and 2, because I'm certain that there will be some concessions moving forward, because it's very difficult. So that's one part of it. It's very difficult to get all of your clients aligned and make sure they meet those deadlines. The other question is, what about those businesses that have failed in March and April to qualify, but we're now just into the first week, essentially, of May? What if they find that they go on the prediction that, yes, we will qualify? Many of them will miss the fortnight 3, because that's essentially going to close by this Friday. Now, if a business pays someone electronically on a Sunday, I think that's still going to be okay. But the way it's drafted, if you pay them Monday, it's too late. So there's a bit of a real bottleneck coming up.
So Troy, just for absolute clarity for our small business owners, not for the accountants and bookkeepers, for our business owners on this video broadcast today, can you explain what fortnight 1 and fortnight 2 mean? Does that actually refer to the April month?
Yeah, well, fortnights, the fortnights, there's 13 fortnights. The first one starts on the 30th of April. That ends on the 12th of April. And then the second fortnight ends from the 13th of April to the 26th of April. And so on right through to the 27th of September, which is the 13th and last fortnight. So if there are businesses that are eligible for they've passed the fall and turnover test for March or April, or the alternative test, if they're eligible as a business, they have to the 31st of May to qualify for the April payment. So what that means is that if you've got employees, not only employees, you also got to remember business owners. There's a very big opportunity with the eligible business participant, which means one of the business owners is eligible, or the business is eligible for $1,500 or $3,000 for the month of April. So that's available right through to the 31st of May. So the important point is, right now, for the payments that you have to make to your employees has to be finalised by this Friday for the April payment. But we also got to be mindful that if you want to claim the May fortnight 3, then you'll have to do that by this Sunday as well.
Yeah, right.
So it is a little bit complicated, but to keep it really simple is, if you've got employees and you want to top up the payment, you have to do it by this Friday. And you also have to be enrolled by the 31st of May. So I think a lot of people are getting confused, thinking we can just enroll by that date and then still get the April reimbursements. That's not the case. You have to have physically made the payments by this Friday.
So Friday, or you're risking it. You might get away with it Saturday or Sunday, is because it's still prior to the 10th. But you'd want that electronic evidence, and you're still taking a bit of a punt.
Yeah, and the other thing is that we've had a number of our business clients that don't understand the one in all in concept as well. They assume that someone's got a disability pension, they're not eligible. The mindset that employers got to take is that they need to understand They need to work out who's on their payroll at the 1st of March 2020, and then work backwards from there in terms of eligibility. If they meet the right test, they're over 17 and meet all of those criteria, you must send them an ATO eligible nomination form, and the employee is the one that makes the declaration whether they nominate the employer or not. So there's a lot of confusion around that as well. And my fear is that those businesses that want to self-assess and do it themselves, they're sort of potentially handpicking some employees and being negligent and ignoring other employees that potentially are eligible as well. So that's my biggest fear, is that someone, an employer misses all of the collective eligible employees. So it's not straightforward, but they're the rules, and the advice that we're giving everybody, you just got to follow the rules. You can't go and handpick bits and pieces that sort of suits the individual employer's needs.
Yeah, and what about the situation for sole traders that may not have employees? My understanding is that over the next month, there'll be some also important deadlines for them, or qualification criteria.
Yeah, well, they've got a pretty good opportunity. So a sole trader, either a trust or a company, any of those entities that if they pass the fall in turnover test, then potentially they're eligible. So all of those businesses, assuming you're in business, you've got to have lodged a BAS since July 18, you've got or a tax return. So there are some fairly broad concessions there. But if you're in business, have an ABN on 1st of March, you're active, you continue to be active, then they are deemed to be what's called an eligible business, or an eligible business participant. So those businesses, for one business owner, sole trader or otherwise, they've got the ability to earn the $3,000 or two fortnights of $1,500 in the month of April, but they have till the 31st of May to register. So you don't, in those situations, you don't have to top yourself up, essentially. So you don't have to pay yourself and then get reimbursed. Those concessions will flow through to the 31st of May. And what we're finding is remarkable. I think that's where Australian Bureau of Statistics have probably got it right. And I think we can rely on those sort of statistics. We're finding in our own practice, there's so many businesses that just are not aware that they are actually eligible. So once we get through this bottleneck of Friday, we'll be flicking over every stone we can find in terms of right through our client base, and those that are out in the community that are not getting the right advice from their accountant, is we can quickly assess those things, and then they essentially will be eligible. And there's $3,000 for the month of April now accumulating into May. There's significant amounts of cash, and as you rightfully broadcasted yesterday, the money's in. It's not about a handout or being on the dole. It's about getting money back into the economy. So whether farmers with high profits are eligible for it or not, our responsibility and role within the community is to make sure that every single business is maximising the opportunity.
Yeah, just let's focus on that for a moment. It appears that small business owners, particularly farmers, those that do not feel that any downturn in their own economic circumstances are COVID driven, but are more uniquely their own industry, it appears that they are simply not even considering that they should be applying for stimulus funding at this point in time, which to me is a grave concern, because it's actually been designed, we'll come back to it in a moment, but it's been designed to actually inject a kickstart and a continuance of, of this entire economy. What would you say to that?
Well, yeah, that appears to be the case. And that's, what these initiatives are designed for is simply that, is to put money back into the economy. So, is it fair in right across the board? It's not. There's service stations and all sorts of businesses that are really struggling and a high number of employees. They don't meet the test, and we've moved heaven and earth to qualify them, but they simply can't. We're bound by what the rules are, but we're also bound. We're not bound. We should be looking to implement as much as we can. the reason why this thing is being implemented, and that is to get cash flow into the economy. So we have a duty as advisors to do that.
Look, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And again, from another advisor in Sydney, Brendan Smith has actually known to us, a best practice member. Brendan's saying he's also found that many of their clients simply thought that they were not eligible and were not exploring that, right? Which is quite scary. And in fact, they were eligible. And in fact, as I understand it, Troy, the big announcement that we heard from some government-driven bodies late last week, not just the Bureau of Statistics, ATO as well, is that they are intentionally relaxing the alternative test methods so that even if somebody does not qualify in a 30% downturn, they are quite likely through an alternative method to comply, if you like, and become stimulus eligible.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the last count I had, what I understand, and I'm not the alternate test specialist or the guru Brad is, but there's something like there's at least 12 alternate tests that I'm aware of, and we did a significant test the other day. It actually works in your favour, where if you've got someone that's selling machinery where they buy equipment and then sell it. They were doing that 12 months ago. Now they've gone to doing the same thing, but on a commission basis. They're making more money this year than it was last year. But as the rules go, there's been a drop in turnover. So it seems to, which is a good initiative. It seems to favour those favourably, as well as the ones that have gone legitimately backwards.
And I think this is where small business owners really need a recording of this broadcast. All of our accountants and advisors on this call have got to email a copy of this broadcast out to their client base when we circulate that later today, for those who want that. Because as Brendan again has commented, the clients, the business owners that don't make regular payroll payments, particularly also to themselves, right? They think that they don't meet the criteria. Now, Ravi has also commented, another one of our advisors, he's saying that with that alternative test, if you don't meet the 30% drop, the alternative test actually also takes into consideration businesses that have in fact grown, so can still qualify. So there's such a misunderstanding out there. And we will come, before we close, to the big insight we've got about just how significant the intention is of the federal government in terms of to release this funding. So we'll come back to that as well. So I think the really key message that I'm hearing from this, Troy, is that fortnights 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, it makes sense that accountants, bookkeepers and financial advisors would be quite aware of what these things are because of the role that you play to help the business owner to get the stimulus and comply with those deadlines. Because there's also reporting mechanisms, aren't there, that are behind that. What are the fundamental reporting mechanisms that just have to occur to maintain the compliance for a small business owner to maintain their stimulus funding?
Moving forward, we haven't got to that stage as yet, so that's an unknown. I don't think it's going to be that onerous, but most of the clients we're going to be working with will have readily available information. Look, if worst case scenario, you go off the deposits off their bank statement. So I think that's going to be fairly easy to do. But again, I think it's going to be in terms of deadlines. Do you do that when you apply for the payments? I don't know. We haven't done them as yet. But also the forecasting what you expect to be the month ahead. God knows what that's going to look like. So. And they have got some fairly relaxed rules and expectations around that. But for mine, the key element is, and the key risk is that we're talking about businesses with employees. If you're basically paying the employees up front, and then you're looking to claim the reimbursement from the JobKeeper, in the first week of the following month. So that you got those issues with cash flow in the business. That's one problem. The other problem is you've got to make sure that you're compliant. Like you've got to make sure that now, come the fortnight ending the 10th, there's no concessions to be able to get all your ducks and your house in order by 2 weeks' time. You have to have done it by this Sunday. So you can't just say, oh shit, I forgot about that one, I didn't do that, or I slept in Sunday, I didn't pay it. From the way the rules are now, we have to make sure, and as advisors, we've got to get to all of our employee paying clients to make sure that we've given them the right figures to top up if they need any, or if they're doing it themselves, that they're at a major risk of not getting it right. So each and every single business that they're either doing it themselves or they're requiring our assistance, we're going to make sure that we're on the ball to give them the right advice. We can't be out by a dollar. It has to be exact.
Yeah, and I understand, Troy, that where this might have also required a little bit of preparation for a business owner, if they historically have taken drawings out of cash flow, and towards the end of the financial year, they then consult their accountant to effectively retrofit a financial report of what wage they're declaring for the year to avoid a Div 7A ongoing situation. That really the timely bookkeeping is probably the biggest issue for a small business owner in that regard, isn't it? To understand what, are they just going to put themselves in, if they already lodged their March BAS, and if they have, they might be now, it had not a lot of time to prepare and get organised.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. There's two things that come out of that point. One is that those businesses that are registered for PAYG withholding, whether it's monthly or quarterly, the March BAS is critically important for a lot of seasonal type businesses, farmers and all of those type of industries where they've paid someone's wages in the month of January, February, March, if they're quarterly, or the month of March. Now, the cash flow boost is at a minimum worth $10,000 plus another $10,000, which is quite lucrative. So, some people have paid wages and throughout the year, and they don't actually get picked up until the end of the financial year when we do their financial accounts. So we've had a number of clients, mainly farmers, that have missed that boat. So the second point of that you make is critically important. And I think the whole business community will start to understand this now. When we go through something as devastating as what we've all experiencing, and money is tight and cash flow is tight and uncertain times are ahead, it's never been more critical to understand the need to get your financial accounts or your day-to-day bookkeeping up to date. We can't leave it for 3 or 4 months. It's got to be done now. Now, with data feeds, with software that's on the market today, there is absolutely no excuse for anybody to be behind in these times now and moving forward. So, I think there's a really good lesson for all of us to learn out of what has happened.
Absolutely, Troy. Well said. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask Ravi to jump on and just to better, more in a more particular way, specifically summarise the alternative means testing for our small business owners and business owners on this broadcast today, because it's surprisingly accommodating, if you like, for even if you haven't had that significant drop in income, but you're suffering financially. And I've got a question, Troy, that we'll put back to yourself and some of our other accountants from Bernice. We'll come back to this question, Troy. So I'll give it to you now while I'm handing over to Ravi to contemplate. If your BAS is lodged on a cash basis, can you become eligible on accruals even if you do not qualify on cash? So I'll leave you to sit on that one for a minute, Troy, and I'll cut over to Ravi for a bit of a summary on this alternative test. Ravi, as I understand it, there's much more flexibility here to qualify through alternative means than most small business owners have any appreciation of.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was surprised with when I was reading up on it. One of the tests is showing if the entity's turnover substantially increased. But the way the tests work, it seems pretty confusing. Every other test talks about turnover decreasing by 30%. There's one particular test that talks about a 50% increase in the 12 months immediately before the applicable turnover test period. Or in the 6 months before, it was 25%, or 12.5% in the 3 months immediately before. They even factor in situations where you may have purchased another business or you've expanded. let's say you've taken on another partner if you're an accountant, or another sort of business where a partner might come on, and the whole entity's turnovers increase. So you initially think, oh no, I wouldn't qualify for JobKeeper.
Yeah, which is remarkable, isn't it? And let's not get into politics. It sounds like the Libs came up with this one, because to actually think of a business in growth phase that then gets hit by this COVID-19 pandemic and stifles everything they're up to, investing heavily, capital investment for growth. Well, they're still being considered. They're still going to be potentially entitled to funding. And this is, I guess, the hardest thing about all of this is that business owners that really deserve guidance are not necessarily with a best practice certified accountant. And so they're not necessarily getting timely information to even get their heads around this at the moment. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah. When I've had a discussion with the ATO about these alternative tests as well, and I've just asked the question, if you think that or the JobKeeper enrolment applies to you as a business owner, and after an audit, it's determined, oh, actually you don't comply because our definition doesn't meet their definition. So what happens to those payments? Are they then classified as salary and wages and you have to pay super on top of it? Does the employee pay it back to the employer? Good luck with that. What's the stick? If someone makes a mistake, there's no wind back for it. And essentially employers have to fork out this cash first. The other discussion I had was about the stimulus payment. So if you're not say a sole trader, or a small business with a few employees, that might be casual. And if you end up, let's say for most of the year, you didn't have any employees, and then in March, you decided to pay yourself a small salary of $500. That would trigger the minimum $10,000 cash flow stimulus. But now that the ATO has told me we're looking into those people that may have claimed it illegally. It beggars belief, because what are they going to do with the payment? Keep their business afloat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ravi. And I think that the reality is we do acknowledge small business owners are feeling extremely frustrated that they're not entirely sure until now what they can do and can't do. But the reality is they've got to be talking to an accountant that's on the front foot and an advice team that understands these things. It's very important. I think that Troy made an interesting point a moment ago. Before we go back to Bernice's question that I've handed to Troy, which Glenda's also commented on, is that the business owner is not necessarily of the mindset of getting their entire house in order, are they? They're not. You think about our DNA and in a migrant country that's got a pretty young population compared to the rest of the world, and the reality is that the Aussie battler who's self-employed thinks of this as a handout, and they don't see themselves. The ego doesn't want to take a handout if they can get through it. But the reality is there's a reason why legislation has been passed to negotiate on a commercial and a residential level with your landlord, for example, if you're a tenant. Okay, but is everybody doing that? Right. So it's really quite fascinating. Businesses that have absolutely, been put in strife, such as health and fitness and restaurants and so forth, well, they had no choice. They had to go and do these things straight away. But for many others, that's not actually, the mindset. And we need to really address that mindset. So back to Bernice's question, Troy. So can somebody achieve the stimulus regardless of accruals or cash? How does that work?
Well, there's been lots and lots of commentary on that and disputes within our office. Brad begrudgingly won't let go of this, but I think it's pretty common ground now that you can use either or. So yeah. I'm just going to try and just share my screen here. How do I do that? This one here. By the way, if Ravi is not the sharpest dressed man in Australia, I don't know who is. My goodness. Righto. So can you see that one? Can you see the screen here?
Yes, we can, mate.
Yeah, so it's pretty like there's still lots and lots of arguments. People saying like if you're on cash, you're on cash. Our view is that it's pretty clear. You can use either or. And mind you, it does have a significant outcome. So there is some pretty good opportunities to use. Just make sure you're diligent and use both methods, and also consider the alternate test. That's got a lot of hours over the line for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm doing for all of the advisors on joining in today as well. Thank you for jumping on. We've drafted an email that we think is potentially an essential email to send to every small business owner in Australia right now. I'm going to share my screen and bring that up just for all small business owners on this call and the accountants as well. Obviously, if you're an accountant or a bookkeeper or a financial advisor, you may want to request via email to get a copy of this draft email we've put together. Why May 31 may be too late for many business owners. So those that fail to make eligible payments for fortnight 3, and fortnight 4, May 10th and May 24th, before enrolling for JobKeeper with a deadline of May 31st. That's confusing, that May 31st, isn't it? Because the May 10 and May 24th will have passed by then. They might miss out on $3,000 per employee per month that Troy mentioned a moment ago. And not only that, what's really interesting is the Australian Bureau of Statistics have surveyed thousands, 2,000 in fact, businesses, and found that only 61% of business owners have in fact registered or intended to register for JobKeeper payment schemes. And of those who did not attend, as Brendan Smith pointed out earlier on this broadcast today, 55% because they felt they were not eligible. They're not even consulting to seek the advice. They're creating their own perception that they're not eligible. That's horrific. When less than 10, less than 1 in 10 attributed their lack of interest in the scheme due to insufficient cash flow. So it's got nothing to do with that. It's all about the misconception. SMEs are not realising their entitlement opportunities, standing back and not registering. However, here's what's really fascinating. How about this? There's only about 1 million workers that are budgeted to not receive some form of stimulus. In other words, out of the 12 or 12.5 million in our workforce in Australia, about 5 million sit there in the corporate world and in big business and government employment. And so take them out of the picture. There's 6 million employees have been budgeted, right, to receive stimulus.
Hi. I just need to speak to someone about.
So 6 million have been budgeted to receive stimulus. So the big message for small business owners here is that even if you think your cash flow is sound, there is a reason why the alternative method has been relaxed so much. It's because the money has been allocated to re-inject capital and a restart into our economy. And we have an absolute responsibility to educate every small business owner in this country to go and get some funding as much as possible to help kickstart and spend that money in discretionary ways in your local small business economy, to build your cash reserve, to rehire people, to invest in capital. This is what it's all about. Nobody here can afford to have a mindset of thinking they're being unrealistically opportunistic and selfish by accessing stimulus funding if they think they can just scrape through without it. It's the wrong attitude. We are trying to get money into the economy through the hands of small business owners so that the economy speeds up more quickly. Imagine we've got 100 million or $1 billion being spent in a local region by small businesses that can afford to invest to regrow and restart their business. What's going to be the different impact on that local economic outcome? It's all about getting your hands on the money and spending it wisely to grow the business or restart, and also do so locally as much as you can in your own region. Okay, just out of interest, who would like a copy of that email, that draft email we've got there? John, thank you. Can I please ask each of you, we had to do this at such a last minute. we're uncertain if your registration will give us your email details. Would I be able to share with all of you our best practice team email? And you simply, if I put that in the chat box now, can you all kindly just grab that and copy and paste it and just send us an email saying just subject line, email please, or an email announcement please. All right. So I'm just sharing that now. And what small business owners will notice, thanks Ian, Graham, yep. Please, just so that I don't let you down, because I'm not the best administrator in the world, trust me, you'll notice that I've put the team at bpgrp.com.au in the chat box for everybody. I'll do that a few times as it rolls through. Yes, Glenda, we may come back to that turnover questions concept in a moment, actually, with the laws comparison guide issued yesterday. So what's really important here is that we are challenging financial advisors, accountants and bookkeepers to really step up with their own social media awareness campaigns, and we're actually assisting them. So we're building awareness campaigns for small business on behalf of the financial services industry, primarily accountants, bookkeepers and advisors, to get them out and become a voice for this issue. Because now, Troy, just one more thing. I understand that even if a business owner has not applied for fortnights 1 and 2, and maybe even misses out on 3 and 4, but if they were still eligible, technically speaking, whether it's the alternative means, as Ravi summarised for us, or the traditional 30% down, let's say they're down by the end of May, their turnover's down by 35%, 40%, right, for the month of May. Why wouldn't they then come forward and apply to receive stimulus through from then to the end of September? Is that still a possibility?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can apply as long as you meet the test. You can apply from any month. You can even apply for the month of September if you need to. So there's no cut-off dates. And the other thing, while I just think of it, there's a lot of misconception as well with people not being eligible, because they think they're going to dip in the month of April and then go back up. Once you pass it once, you pass. That's it. So there's no, if your income goes back up, you don't fall off the system.
So what you're saying then is, okay, it's too late. It's clearly in May that a business owner wakes up to this reality that they've not been taking the advice of what we're putting out there today, but then they're coming around to that and they qualify. So forget about fortnights 1, 2, and 3 and 4, but there's still what, 13, so 9 to go or something after that.
Correct.
So
yes.
why the hell wouldn't they then get, at least apply then and fund their way through that? Absolutely.
And I think as more time goes by, the alternate test, I think, is going to become more and more relevant or applicable to a number of businesses that maybe we haven't really thought through, or maybe the marketplace doesn't understand that there is another alternate test.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I can assure you, on behalf of small businesses right across Australia, best practice, we will be aggressively marketing an awareness raising campaign in partnership with our professional advisors that we work with right across Australia to raise this issue and the lack of awareness around it. So many people have classified themselves ineligible, which is quite concerning. So to Graham, Ian, to Liz, thanks for your email in the chat box, Liz, Harvey. You'll notice my reply is I've copied and pasted. Please send email request here to team@bpgrp.com.au. And that way it's an easy copy paste for us to reply back to there. So same for you, John, as well, John H. Just send to us. And so Glenda, the other thing that's only just, it was only what, yesterday? There was a new law comparison guide. Do you mind jumping on? Have you got microphone capability, Glenda? What was that all about?
It's just to help clarify the alternative tests.
Yep.
It's got a bit more depth in it as to what they're expecting. It is only a draft law companion guide, but it actually does go through the scenario we talked about before, where you've got an increase that was in the last couple of months, but that's different to what it was 12 months ago, and how to deal with some of that. Certainly it also addresses that, whether it's accruals or cash basis, and you can do both. So it's just the ATO's way of saying, we know we haven't quite got it right. This is our thinking.
Gotcha. And so I'm just sending that through. I'm sharing that with everyone now. You'll see it's unfortunately the way the chat box has worked.
Yeah.
That, it's sent the link twice, backing up on the first message to you. So don't be confused. There are two messages combined in one there. One is our email address, and the other one is the Alternative Test Companion Guide download link. So you might grab both of those. But certainly that is a concern. So I think the real issue here that we need to understand is that we can't have 45% of small business owners in Australia thinking that they should not apply because they're not eligible, because for whatever reason, they're not a gym, a health club, or a bloody restaurant. That is not what this is about. The federal government have put an enormous amount of money on the table to no different. If you think back to the GFC, very, very similar principles were applied. But of course, I don't think it was necessarily, in hindsight back then, particularly well distributed. It was, if electricians got into solar panels at a rapid rate, didn't they, back then? And a lot of school upgrades were done, and which was a good thing. But the reality is that this time round, it's a little different. As a country and as a global economy, we are likely to pay for this for a decade in terms of the recovery period. It doesn't mean we won't have a boom economy at times in the next 10 years, but there's a significant commitment that's being made consciously here by the economic powers of this country and every other country around the world. So we've got to educate small business to understand this, that this is their responsibility. As a small business a community Australia-wide, we all have a responsibility to get our hands on the cash and spend it to reinvest in the country. That's what this is all about. And the more that we can spruik this and raise the awareness on social media, on live broadcasts for small business owners, on workshops, such as congratulations, Simon Manning, for hosting that broadcast for the whole Bass Coast local Shire Council and other things like that you're doing down there for the SMEs in the region. Thanks to you and is it Frank from the Bass Coast? So great stuff. That's what it's all about. We've got to get out there and we've got to educate. And Jeff Gartley's been doing that as well, another BP advisor. So please make sure you get us your email address. We'll give you that draft broadcast email. Whether you've got our stimulus portal working for you or not, we'll still give you the primary component of that broadcast email. Even if you're a business owner on this, which is what this was also intended primarily to do today, as a business owner, you should still ask for this email, and you have a responsibility to share that with every business owner you know, right? Because we've got to get this money into the economy. That's what this is about, right? The sooner we do that, it's no different to staying at home and not infecting each other. It's also getting the money and spending the money and spreading it around. There's two fundamentals here. There's going into the COVID-19 and there's coming out of it economically. That's what this is about. All right, so just a chance now for some broad Q&A for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Anybody on the call that's got an important question that's on their mind, or even if you're a bit, you're nervous and you're worried that you don't want to ask a silly question. No question's a silly question when we're faced with a once in 100-year scenario. So if you've got anything on your mind that you'd like to ask or share as a comment, please jump on the chat box now. Yes, absolutely, Troy, thanks for the reminder. Any business owners on this call today, if you have not received email clarifications and instructions about your status, you have to talk to us and we will put you onto our best practice certified advisor immediately. Okay, so any business owners on the call today, any business owners that watch this recording, it doesn't matter if you watch it in the next 24 hours or in the next 4 weeks, it does not matter. If you are not getting structured advice on how you sit and a proper assessment, then you are possibly missing out on thousands and thousands of dollars that the government has already allocated to you for you to spend to get through this and to come out the other side ready to go and rebuild. So make sure
that we all circulate this email today, not just the advisors on this call, but all small business owners, small to medium. Get your email today from us and circulate that. This is an absolute travesty that 45% of our entire small business economy that provide 60% of the jobs in this country do not think that they are going to apply for this money. I cannot bloody believe it. We are the most uneducated mob when it comes to our economic rights and responsibilities to actually assist the economy one small business at a time. So we have to raise awareness about this. We have to change our mindset. We have to change the mindset of our peers and people in our networks, in our communities, and really step up, because this is actually going to slow down our economic recovery if the money doesn't get spread as it's supposed to be. All right. So if a fee base of a medical, thank you, Liz, if a fee base of a medical practice is reduced as a result of the government now forcing bulk billing, would this trigger the alternative test? Now, this is a great question, Liz. I'm so glad you asked this. And what we're faced with the agricultural communities, with farming as well, is, you see, they look at their seasonal performance year on year and they say, oh, that's not a COVID-19 reality, whether my crop is up or down. I'm either having a boom or a bumper year. That's weather related. I can't apply for stimulus. Liz, you have to apply, right? You have got economic factors affecting your business at this point in time. You have to apply. So would it trigger the alternative test? Very likely. In fact, given how much the alternative test has been relaxed in the last 5 business days last week, it's extremely likely. It's not a guarantee, but it would be just absolutely completely ignorant not to put a proper application through. And by the way, Liz, there is absolutely no penalty for applying. There's no penalty for applying for the stimulus funding, right? There's penalties for misbehaving. That's not a stimulus application. That's 2 different things, right? And Brendan, thank you. And so this might help you, Liz, and why that's why you've got to have a quality business advisor in your corner. Listen to this from Brendan on the best practice panel of accountants. He found 2 GP clinic doctors that their downturn did meet the test, right? So it did meet the test, and that's a medical clinic. So stop telling ourselves 45% of our small business economy is telling themselves they do not qualify and they're not eligible. Now, if that's because you've got sloppy bookkeeping or a sloppy relationship with your bookkeeper or your accountant, and you're not getting timely live accounting, reporting systems, bookkeeping systems and advice, that's a very, very naive excuse, isn't it? That's not a good reason to not be applying for stimulus funding, because you may have a dysfunctional relationship with your professional advisory team, accountants and bookkeepers. You've got to actually get this advice, and you need it right now. And certainly you don't want to be missing out on this. Now, what is the consequence if you get your calculation of your current GST turnover amount wrong?
I stole this off the ATO Q&A site.
That's a great question. I think, remember Troy said a little earlier this morning on this call that the biggest concern that we have is small business owners thinking this JobKeeper thing is, it's an easy application to submit on their own. They can bypass their accountant or bookkeeper. And we're seeing there's already 3 of Troy's clients that they're having to correct. And of course, they have to go to the back of the queue now because there's a whole bunch of stuff to be straightened out there by thinking it's better to just go direct. So we understand the time frame prescribed for calculating monthly GST turnover is significantly shorter than an entity would ordinarily have for GST reporting purposes, and that the calculation method prescribed in the JobKeeper rules is also different. So an interesting, both sides of the fence here from the ATOs, they're saying that entities should make a genuine effort to calculate and report current projected GST turnover. If you later identify errors in the calculation, you will not be required to re-report to the ATO. Now, that's a fascinating statement coming from the ATO. They're saying, get your boots on, get your skates on, get your submissions in, get your money while you can. That's what they're saying. That's a great share, Glenda. Thanks for sharing that one. All right. Now, that just shows you, doesn't it? 45% of small business owners don't even know. Sorry, sorry, Troy. Go ahead, mate.
The key takeout there is projection is projection, and they have declared that if it's around 30%, well then they're not going to kneecap you or anything. But it still comes back to the same thing. Whoever's doing the assessment, you've got to be really diligent. You can't just pluck numbers out, and it's the forecasts and the projections have got to be fairly accurate, and you've got to have some basis on how you formed it.
Yeah, no, it's fine, mate. But here's a great example. You're right, Troy. And so in other words, what we're saying is don't be stupid about it. Don't be ignorantly opportunistic. Just do your best and get it done. But you know what? But that's also, I think, it's ill-considered advice on one level from the ATO, because it's talking almost directly to a business owner, isn't it? Who's reporting their own financials, all right? And that's not necessarily the smartest way to go through this once in a 100-year scenario right now, right? There's no dress rehearsals here. There's no mucking around here. You've got to get it right. So get to your advisors. One of our original panelists for this morning has just sent me a text message. There is so much business out there unguided right now. So Justin Smith has been approached already in the last 24 hours. He was attending as a panelist this morning. He's actually signing up a new client this morning because there's another small business owner that is not getting advice from their current accountant. And because of some of the marketing that we do, Justin's recognised in Rockhampton. So he's apologised for not being on this, but he's just literally helping a brand new client. It wasn't a client before today with JobKeeper and so forth. So that's what it's all about. And for the best practice accountants and advisors and bookkeepers, our intention is to put small business owners in touch with those people, because they are absolutely at the forefront with workflows and systems to help you and guide you in a timely manner to work out what you can qualify for and get on with it. All right, so that's close to the hour now. I don't think we've had any more new questions that have come through. Just a kind reminder, thank you to those of you that have already sent your email requests to team@bpgrp.com.au. We've already received those. I can acknowledge that. So plenty have been coming through. If you haven't, just one more reminder. I'm putting it in the chat. Have a look at the chat box if you haven't yet done that. It doesn't really matter what your profile is. You should get your hands on this email today and circulate this in your network. It's just you helping the economy. That's what it's all about. And I'm once again sharing our team's email to do that. So if you haven't yet, if you've only joined before we mentioned that, you'll check the chat box, grab the team email address there, drop us one, because we don't necessarily have yours. And that way, as in from being on this call today. And we will register a reply. We'll give you a copy of that email, get it out to your own clients and your own network as well. All right, so just in closing, Troy, I'll come back to you in just a moment. I want to thank Ravi, Glenda, Brendan, all of those that have jumped on and contributed this morning. We really appreciate it. Simon and Ian for Ian sharing that download. Simon joining us, one of the great examples of a best practice certified accountant getting out there and shaking the trees and helping the small business economy, even when they're not your clients. You're out there raising awareness of their stimulus information. Thank you for that. And again, Dilrick as well with Brendan's team. It's a tricky time for everybody, and we understand that, but we've got to get this message out. We can't have 45% of this, of the entire economy, not applying for the money that's already been set aside, for goodness sake. This is just a travesty. So we're all in it together. Thank you again for your time today. Troy, just in wrapping up, any key insights or takeaways from you?
None whatsoever. We're just going to be diligent. Use the time that's available between now and the end of the week, and just reach out to anybody that's in the community that needs help. We got a duty of care. We got to be there to help everybody. So if you're systemised and you're organised within your own practice, and if you're a business, you should be able to have the capacity to take on some more work. If you're a business owner, for God's sake, don't sit back and think, shit, this is all too hard. Just pick the phone up. talk to somebody. The assessments can be done fairly easily. Well, not fairly easily. We've got the tools and systems to be able to do it. Your business, remember, is the most important thing to you besides family. So, you owe it to yourselves to make sure that you're getting the best opportunity you can, and you deserve the right to have an advisor that's looking after you. Don't sit back and wait for the phone to ring. If it hadn't rang by now, it's not going to ring.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if you're not getting, if you haven't had 2 or 3 weeks of communication like this, you really need to maybe reach out, and we'll put you in touch with a best practice advisor. They're all across Australia. So don't be in the shadows and miss out on the money that the economy needs. Liz, you're very welcome. Thanks for the kind words there. Graham, thanks for your feedback. Appreciate it. So don't be a stranger. Stay in touch. We'll continue these when we think they're necessary. There's probably one coming next week. Thanks, John, as well. Have a great day, people. And now for the advisors on this call, accountants, particularly bookkeepers, there is a best practice workflow system that Troy and Justin have collaborated on. It's only $99. It's a no-brainer. So if you haven't got your hands on that, it'll save you about 2 hours a month per client for the next, right through to September. So get your hands on that. And you've got the team email address to get access to that. All right. Have a great day, everyone. And we look forward to staying in touch. See you now.